Guys, what's up? It is Tuesday at 3 o'clock. It is time for our live stream. Anybody that's jumping in right now, definitely appreciate you. Happy to sit here and talk hoops with you guys for another week. And for anybody that's watching later, welcome and thanks for tuning in. Greatly appreciate it as always. Let's go ahead and get started. We got some questions already in the chat. We got a bunch of these rolling in already. Let's just go ahead and start from the top here. All right, Parker Finley. Should I trade Bobby Portis for Ben Simmons in a 9-cat head-to-head punting free throws? Yeah, so before Ben Simmons got hurt, he was a top, I think, top 30 player in if you were punting free throw percentage. So that's huge value. Bobby P is actually a decent free throw shooter for a big guy, and his value takes a small, very tiny hit if you're punting free throw percentage. So I think the move, honestly, they're way more equal if you're punting free throws. I think the only thing I would caution is I think there's still some, at least in my mind, some lingering concerns about Simmons' availability. His commitment and those kind of things that we were concerned about coming into the season. But before he went out, he was really starting to ball. So if you're okay with that risk factor with Simmons, I think the upside is higher with him in that sort of build. If you're looking for the safer play, I think Bobby Portis, he's having one of the best seasons of his entire career, and he's doing it pretty primarily off the bench. But yeah, so I think Simmons is fine if you're good with the risk. Is Jonathan Isaac really coming back? If I had to guess, I would not bank on him coming back this year. They have such a loaded front court. They have Bowl that's been balling out. Obviously, Wendell Carter's been injured, and Bamba's been injured. But Mo Wagner had a great game the other night. I think he had a big double-double, if I remember correctly, or something like that. He's been really good filling in. So I don't think there's a reason to rush Isaac back. I just can't. I can't imagine him playing again this year. What's wrong with Steph Curry? He's falling back. His field goal percentage is kind of over the last couple of weeks. He's still a top 50 player over the last couple of weeks. And still a top 5 player on the season. So ebbs and flows, right? He wasn't going to shoot 50% for the entire season. You're just not going to see that from a high usage guard that shoots a bunch of threes. It just wasn't going to happen. When is LaMelo coming back? Your guess is as good as mine. Again, if you are, in my opinion on LaMelo is I would be selling high. If somebody thinks that they can, they want to get him off of you. If there's a manager in your league that really likes LaMelo and they still value him pretty highly, sell high. I'm really concerned about the injury, especially he re-injured it, a couple games after coming back. So that's pretty concerning. And he's still very young. So there's really, what's the incentive for Charlotte to rush him back, especially when they're playing so terribly anyway? Get a better lottery pick and get your guy healthy. I can't see him playing a ton this year. It's just my gut feeling. I have Melton, Killian Hayes, and Andrew Nembhard. I have to drop one eventually for Mike Conley, or should Conley be the drop? I also traded Lowry for Murray. Was that a good trade? I assume, at least I'm hoping that's not Lowry for Keegan, right? I have to assume that's Lowry for DeJounte, and that's totally fine. Yeah, that's definitely a fine trade in my opinion. Melton, Killian, and Nembhard. That's a tough one. Obviously, Nembhard has just really been balling out, but and he was doing this in the starting lineup alongside Halliburton. But when Halliburton and eventually, when him and McConnell are both healthy, obviously that's going to be Nembhard to me is going to be the drop there. I think rest of season. I think Killian has strong value rest of season. Herder or Joe Harris? Herder by a country mile. And every time I hear his name, I constantly am thinking of The Office and Michael Scott. Herder, I barely know her. All right. I was offered Tatum for my Durant in a 9-cat head-to-head. What is the smarter play here for rest of seasons? Tatum's durability or KD's flawless game? Ooh, that's pretty even, honestly. So it just depends on which one you value more. Personally, I'd rather have Tatum. Obviously, KD's game is flawless, but there is a risk of him missing time. There's a risk of, as we talked about with Simmons a couple minutes ago, there's a risk of commitment and things of that nature. So for me, it's Tatum. Tatum's playing like the clear MVP right now. It's his award to lose. Was talking about this with Noah Rubin and Raphael Johnson the other day, and both of them kind of had the same opinion that Tatum is, it's essentially his award to lose. So he's the guy that I would like to have. And somebody else here said get Tatum for sure. Yeah, I think we're on the same page on that one. Traded Jalen Green for Evan Mobley in a points league, win or lose trade. I think that one's fairly even. Obviously, you're not going to get 30 points from Evan Mobley in a game, but you're also not going to get 10 rebounds and 3 blocks out of Jalen Green. So I think that one's pretty fair. I think Mobley's the steadier player. Jalen Green is the guy that can win you a week, if he just absolutely balls out like he did against the Sixers last night. But, I think that's a fair trade for sure. Trader hold Terry, Scary Terry. I traded Lowry for him a week ago, 9-cat head-to-head. Any player at this point, I mean, honestly, Terry Rozier is not a guy that's a must-hold. So if you can get good value for him, and I feel like this about most players, most guys are not, you have to hold on to them. Most guys have a trade value, and if you can get a lot for them, then make that move. I think there's very few players that are, in my opinion, that are not, they don't have a price tag on them, right? If somebody offers you the farm for any one player, you have to listen. You always should entertain. Should I sell high on Dinwiddie and Olynyk while they're ranked top 50 for the season in Yahoo? If you can, again, same thing with the trade. If you can, absolutely. I feel like both of them probably have pretty secure roles most, rest of season. I think Olynyk's is a little shakier. I think Dinwiddie's shooting and efficiency are my biggest concern for Olynyk. It's the fact that he's an old guy playing on a rebuilding team. So both of them have some question marks rest of season, but both of them should still be serviceable, but they're not, neither of them is going to be top 50. They're not going to finish the season as top 50 players. Absolutely. So if you can get top 50 value, sure. But obviously don't be selling them for, don't sell yourself short on them either. Baines should be out 2 to 3 weeks. They passed, but there is no report about him. When do you think he will be back? I was a little curious about this myself. I'm hoping he'll be back sometime in the next week. I mean, that's where we're at with the timeline. But at this point, we haven't heard a whole lot from Memphis. So it's just a wait and see right now and stash him on the IR. Should I trade my Clay and Trent Jr. for Brandon Ingram? 12-team, 9-cat head-to-head. Man, this is a tough one. Clay has been so up and down this year, and honestly, mostly down. So, in my opinion, you're essentially, this is a Trent Jr. for Brandon Ingram type of situation. Clay is the kicker, but again, what are you getting with Clay on any given night? I'm fine with this trade. If you have a deeper team. In a 12-team league, you may value depth. But again, if your team is loaded at this point, I think it's absolutely fine to do a 2-for-1 and get the better player. Jamal Murray and Franz Wagner for Trae Young. Could I swing that trade? Again, this is all about your league, right? I think that trade is – I don't think that gets it done. If I was the Trae manager, I would keep him. Jamal Murray and Franz wouldn't be enough for me, but this may be a situation of a manager really likes Murray or Franz, or they're frustrated with Trae's field goal percentage, for example. But most people that had got Trae, they picked him in the top 15, so they're not going to move off of him very easily. They're going to expect a lot in return. I don't think that gets it done in a 10-team league. 2 among these 4 for a 12-team Dynasty league. All right, interesting. Poku, Isaiah Jackson, Jalen Williams, AJ Griffin. So what's the so I'm assuming you have to drop two of these guys. Maybe you have two of these guys. I'm not sure how this is playing out in this situation. Why you would have to drop two? That's unfortunate because these are all great options. In a 12-team dynasty league, Isaiah Jackson to me is a drop out of that group. That's a tough one. I think at this point, I love what I'm seeing from AJ Griffin this year. I think he's been phenomenal when he's been given minutes. But if you look at it, he's still playing on a team with Trey, DeJounte, DeAndre Hunter, John Collins. Collins might be moved. But for right now, I think Jackson and oh man, but I just really hate to give up Griffin. Sorry, I'm just trying to talk this one through in my head. I think Jackson and Griffin are going to be your drops right now. I think Poku and Jalen Williams are the two holds out of that group, but that's a tough one. Please rank between Joe Harris, Max Strus, Kevin Love, Tari East, and John Wall. Man, this is a big list. Naughty, Nicky Richards, Keegan Murray, Avdija, Caruso, and Hartenstein. Any must roster and or rest of season keepers. Man, this is an extensive list. I'm not going to rank them all exactly, but I will go through and just name any must roster or rest of season keepers. I don't think Richards is a must keep. I don't think Keegan Murray, RIP, pouring one out because I love you, Keegan Murray, but you're not a hold right now. Caruso's not a must hold. Avdija is great, not a must hold. Tari Eason has been picking it up recently. I'm really hoping that we see some more minutes sooner than later, so he's a hold. I don't think Joe Harris is a must. I think Joe Harris has been great recently. He's been hitting multiple triples. He's been scoring double-digit points. I think Max Strus is a hold. I think Tari Eason is a hold. And I think Kevin Love is – I don't think he's a must-hold either. So Strus and Eason I don't even think John Wall is. I think John Wall is great in spots, but he's absolutely not a must-hold, and he's not a guy that's giving you consistent value every night. So pick and choose after that. And I think Hartenstein is a must-hold. So those three, Eason, Strus, and Hartenstein, the rest of them are great here and there, and they might have better seasons, the rest of the way, but none of them are must-holds. None of them are guys that are going to be blowing things out of the water. Best sleeper, low owned percentage pick of the day, in your opinion? Yeah, I mean, for right now, he was already mentioned. Andrew Nembhard, I think if you have the space for him, I think you go ahead and grab him. And he's fairly, low rostered at this point. Eason is another guy that I like. I'm not sure what his roster percentage is at this point. But for right now, I would have to say Nembhard. He's a guy that's he's really been impressive recently. Okay, here it is. Eason, 22%. So Eason is another guy to keep an eye on. Just pulling up his game log here. Last two games, let's see here. 10.5 points, 8 rebounds, 4 defensive stats. And that's just in, 25 minutes a game. So those two guys I'm really enjoying. Okay, moving on down here. Does Bowles still have any value? Absolutely. Ride it out, drop, or try to trade. What range should I expect to get back? I think at this point you're going to ride it out. Again, this is a guy that was giving you phenomenal value. Fantasy season is ebbs and flows. A big part of that is not overreacting to performances. Everybody's going to have a good and bad stretch here and there. If you can trade him and get somebody high in return, great. But honestly, trying to trade a guy when he's in the middle of a slump is never a good strategy. That's a good time to buy. If you can buy low on him, great. But trying to sell a guy when he's in the middle of a slump that's a bad idea. You're not going to get fair value. Would I trade Buddy for Killian Hayes and Trey Murphy in a 12-team head-to-head? Yeah, I would be fine with that move, especially in a 12-team. You might need the depth. I think that's fair value in return, and I think you got a couple of guys that will be on your starting roster. Sure, that's no problem. 9-cat 12-team, Jalen McDaniels, droppable or keeper, rest of season outlook. Rest of season outlook, probably going to be a guy that gets you value around the 100 to maybe 110, 120 range. So absolutely not a must-hold player. But just given the state of fantasy basketball this year, given injuries, I think for now you probably have to hold him unless there's somebody a lot better out there for you. But yeah, he's not somebody that thrills me, but he's also not somebody that's going to be like irrelevant in a 12-team league. Yeah, same question here. Is Bowl still a hold? Yeah, Bowl is a hold. Let's see here. Killian or Isaiah Jackson rest of season. Killian Hayes is going to be the presumed starter for. I can't imagine they bring Cade back this year. So Hayes, let's assume he's the starter the rest of the season, and he's been really good. Or Isaiah Jackson rest of season. So yeah, it's going to be Hayes for me. Jackson. I mean, I love Isaiah Jackson's upside, right? What we saw from him last year with the blocks, with the rebounds, with the just an athletic freak with the dunks. I mean, you love watching him play. You love the upside, but I mean, he's playing on a team with Turner. He's playing on a team with Jalen Smith. Hayes has the clear upside for me. Let's see here. Moving on down. Trade Derek White for Jalen McDaniels. I'd rather have White. Okay. Drop one. Schroeder, Horford, or Derek White. Schroeder. Giddy rest of season for Roto, 14 teams. I think he'll be fine. He's not doing. He's not having as good of a year as we expected. He's taken a step back in most of his key categories, to be honest, and I think that kind of coincides with SGA's monster season. So he'll be great in a 14-team league. But again, you got to be a little disappointed based on where you probably drafted him and where he's performing so far. Let's see here. Traded Big Al and Hayes for Bobo and Trey Murphy in a points league. Thoughts on that? I think it's fine. I think that's a pretty fair trade. I mean, all of these guys are better values in a categories league, right? But in a points league, I think they're all fairly close. So I think these two for this 2-for-2 swap is pretty even in my opinion. Is Sexton a drop when Connolly is back? No, I mean, you never want to immediately drop a player when somebody injured comes back. Case in point, LaMelo Ball, who stepped on a fan's foot a couple games after returning, and then DSJ and Jalen McDaniels and those guys are back and being relevant. So if you dropped them right when Ball came back, then you got burned and had to go pick those guys right back up again. So no, hang on to him for right now, but it certainly hurts his value right now when Connolly comes back. I did see something earlier that Sexton may be on the block, which is absolutely wild. So maybe we see him get traded at some point down the line. Who knows? Drop Payne or Killian or Nem. Oh man, definitely you're not dropping Killian. I think as much as I love Nembhard, as much as I'm a big Pacers fan and love what they're doing this year, I think Nembhard still is the guy that would be the drop there. Tari Eason rest of season outlook. As I said before, he's a guy that once he starts getting the minutes, he can do it on both ends of the floor. So those defensive stats, the scoring, the rebounding, I think he can be highly valuable. He can be, a really excellent fantasy player. It's just a matter of when they're going to, finally give him the minutes and start getting guys like Eric Gordon and KJ Martin and those boys out of the way and give him a little run. My bad about the long list of names. Dude, no worries at all. No worries at all. Fred VanVleet is killing me lately. Do you think he will bounce back? Absolutely. I think the theme of today's live stream is ebbs and flows. And learning not to overreact. I think we're all guilty of this, me included. I think with fantasy sports, it's very easy to kind of fanboy or fangirl and fall in love with a player and absolutely love what they're doing. But at the end of the day, if you're taking a look at the numbers and a certain player isn't getting it done, I think it's fine to call it quits if you have a large sample size and there's no hope in sight. But for some of these guys like Fred VanVleet, who's been a perennial, second round value type of guy with first round upside, you don't find those type of guys on the waiver wire. So if you drafted him or somebody similar to him, like Curry, who's been in the top 50 the last 2 weeks, which for him is like a huge falling off the cliff moment, absolutely you hold and you wait for the bounce back because guys like that are bouncing back. Another one for Fred VanVleet. Yeah, ebbs and flows, guys. Just deal with the what he's doing right now and get ready for the bounce back. It'll come. Ajax, Kessler, Jalen Johnson, Eason, and Sohan. Who will have a better second half? Please rank them and thanks. Eason is number one for me. Oh man. Walker Kessler Ranger is a guy that I really like. Jalen Johnson I like. Sohan I like. I think Sohan's game is more suited for NBA basketball than fantasy basketball. I think what he does on the court doesn't always show up in the box score and doesn't always show up in your fantasy stat lines. So for me, I'd rank him Eason. Oh man, I think I'll go Eason. I think Kessler gets more run at the end of the year. So Eason, Kessler, Jackson, Johnson, Sohan. Which side is better, Kuz and Terry versus Anthony Edwards? That's an interesting one. That's a really interesting one. I think I go Ant here just because I don't think Kuz and Terry have that first round upside that Ant does. Even though Ant started slow, he's been really good recently with the steals, with the triples, with the points, the efficiency. Give me Ant on this one. Thoughts on Time Lord? Can he get back to the level he was at last season? Absolutely, he can. Okay, soccer question. England or France in the quarterfinals? Give me France. I don't think anybody's stopping Mbappe. And for England, sorry if there's any English fans out there, but no, it's not coming home this year. Why aren't you high on holding Nembhard? I love Nembhard. I think he's great, and I think he's been playing fantastic basketball. It's just in the context of the other guys that were mentioned, he was the last one on that list. If you gave me Nembhard with some other guys, like if you said Nembhard or RJ Barrett, I would say Nembhard. But the other guys that were mentioned were guys that I would rather hold than him. So no hating on Nembhard for me. Rest of season, Royce O'Neal. I think Royce O'Neal is going to be a reliable top 100 guy the rest of the way, probably finish somewhere in that 80 to 90 range. He's not exciting. He's not exciting on the court. He's not exciting for your fantasy team. But again, he's one of those glue guys that does a bit of everything except for score. And he doesn't really hurt you in a ton of categories. His field goal percentage isn't great, but he's not taking a ton of shots either. So it's certainly not killing you there. And he does a little bit of everything with the defense, with the triples, rebounds, assists, blocks. So, yeah, he's a guy that has a pretty floor, in my opinion. What do we do with Kelly Oubre Jr.? Ride it out or trade him while his stock is still high? For Oubre, I think he's the type of guy that I don't think he can maintain this level of value rest of season. So if you can trade him high, I think absolutely you trade him high. If you can't get anybody really good for him, again, this all comes down to, do you trade a guy when his value is highest? Do you trade a guy when he's slumping? Ebbs and flows, that kind of thing. So again, that's kind of my default answer today with Oubre. Again, he's not a guy that I think, wow, he's going to be amazing rest of season. I have to hold on to him. So if you can trade him, go ahead and trade him and get some good return. Fox is not lighting the beam. It's another trade question here. Fox is not lighting the beam. It's another low performance here type of question. Uh, yeah, Fox not lighting the beam. I guess we should say recently. Um, will he bounce back? He's absolutely going to bounce back. Fox is having the best season of his career. The Kings are looking great. Obviously, they're getting production from other guys. They got Malik Monk that's been dropping 30 pieces. They got Kevin Huerter that's been really good. They got Sabonis who had a triple double the other night. This is a deeper team. They don't need as much from him. But that said, his efficiency has been better than what it's been before. He's hitting triples at a higher rate. He's getting steals. So the last few games, we've had other guys, like I mentioned, like Sabonis, like Monk, getting it done where he doesn't need to do anything. He's averaged 16, 6, and 5 over his last 3 games. But when you have a deep team like that, that will happen sometimes. But to answer the question, yeah, he will absolutely bounce back. He's too good of a player this year not to, but you do need to expect, every now and then to have some stretches like this based on how good that team is. Should I be worried about Ingram? Yeah, it's concerning when a guy misses time due to injuries. But when he's on the court, he's been fantastic. I would be a little concerned just because I think the Pelicans are so good this year that they don't have to rush guys back from injury. Yeah, obviously, Alvarado had 38 the other night. So the team is in really good hands when Ingram sits or when Herb Jones sits or when Zion sits. They got guys like Nance and Trey Murphy and Alvo and these boys that can come out and just put up buckets and win games. So yeah, I think that is concerning, but his actual value when he's on the court, I still think is phenomenal. That's something that I wouldn't be worried about. Should I try to sell high on Bowl in a points league before it's too late? Yeah, I mean, again, this comes down to what can you get in return for him. So if selling high means you can get a top 50 player with some fewer question marks, trade for a guy that is, or even a top 75 guy. If you can trade for somebody in the top 75 who is secure in his role, who doesn't have the looming threat of a Wendell Carter coming back, of a Mo Bamba getting healthy and taking minutes, that kind of thing. Absolutely, sure. But again, this comes down to context. Are you getting fair value for him? How does your team look in general? Can you afford to take some swings, or can you afford to take a risk and a miss? That kind of thing. Where do you think Fultz's value will be rest of season in a points league? Can he average more than 27 to 28 points per game? No, I don't think he'll average. Are you talking about 27 to 28 real points per game? Because no, that won't happen, especially not on this team. And I don't think that's his game either. He's more of a true point guard. He's not a score first Cole Anthony type of guy. Do I think he can score 27 to 28 fantasy points per game in a points league? Absolutely. I'm assuming that's what you're asking. And if that's what you're asking, then I absolutely think he can get there for sure. Bruce and Monk, both solid contributors rest of season in a Cats league. Yeah, definitely. I think with Michael Porter Jr. being out indefinitely, that's kind of freed up some minutes for Bruce Brown to really shine. And he's another guy that's kind of in that Royce O'Neal brand of he just does a little bit of everything and doesn't kill you in any one category. And those are the type of guys that always have solid value. I think Monk is a little bit iffier. I still think he has great value rest of season, but he's a little less secure just because he's been scoring at a ridiculous rate. He's been scoring. It's something like a point per minute. When I look back at his game logs the other night, I was like, man, he played 13 minutes and had 15 points. He played 20 minutes and had 22 points. So a guy like that is eventually going to cool off, right? He's not going to score a point per minute every single game, but he's also been getting it done with steals, with assists, with triples. So he'll cool off eventually, but he's still going to be a solid contributor, and especially that Kings offense is wicked this year. So that's definitely it's conducive to a productive fantasy player for sure. Should I trade PG due to the fact that he's injury prone? I was aiming at Anthony Edwards. Yeah, if you can trade PG, Paul George straight up for Anthony Edwards, just to kind of eliminate the fear of injuries or resting, then yeah, sure. I'm totally fine with that move. News of Lonzo, should I still hold him in my IL spot? I wouldn't. I mean, think about it this way. Do you think Lonzo pushes the Bulls over the top, right? If he was to come back tomorrow, do you think he pushes the Bulls into the realm of Eastern Conference contender when they have the Bucks, the 76ers, the Cavs, the Nets, the Celtics to contend with? I don't. I don't think they're even close in that conversation, even with Lonzo back. So why rush him back at this point? I think he sits out for quite a while. I'm doubtful we even see him this year. I think him and Jonathan Isaac will be they'll be like Bigfoot this year, and the Loch Ness monster. We might think we see a glimpse of him, and turns out it was just somebody in a suit or finger over the lens, that kind of thing. So, no, I'm not counting on it. Would you try to trade Horford if you could? Tired of him sitting in back-to-backs? Yeah, that's concerning. I mean, you have at this point in the season, you have what, 10 or 11 more of those. So, yeah, I understand. Thought of him and Vassell for Jarrett Allen, or is that too much? No, I think that would be fine if you really needed the big man stats from Jarrett Allen. I think that's totally fine if you're looking for elite boards and field goal percentage and you want some blocks thrown in there. I don't think that's overpaying, in my opinion. And if it gives you peace of mind, especially with Time Lords set to come back at some point, before the All-Star break, yeah, it's totally fine. Hayes is killing it during the past 15 days. Yes, sir. In points leagues, can he maintain that? Yeah, I absolutely think so. I think we're kind of seeing his resurgence. I wrote about this last week for the NBC pickups column. It's really been fun to watch the Pistons this year because we're seeing two guys that largely got passed over. Hayes drafted in the top 10 a couple years ago, and then the Pistons used their next two first-round picks on Cunningham and Ivy, and so Hayes just kind of got pushed to the back burner. And then, obviously with Bagley, drafted number 2 in a draft that had Luka and Trey and a historically really strong draft class. And both of those guys have been really good so far, right? So I think Hayes can do it. I think the Pistons would be wise to trade him at the end of this year just because they do have Ivy. They do have Cade. I think they're going to sit Cade the rest of the year and just let him recover. He's their future. Hayes is not. So I think Hayes right now is auditioning for his next team, and I think he's going out and proving that, hey, look, I'm still here. I can still really produce at a high level right now. You drafted me in the top 10 for a reason, and I absolutely think he'll maintain this rest of season. I think we're just going to see him get better. I really loved the other night watching him just kill the Mavericks in overtime. I thought that was such a great game, and that was such a nice moment for him. So I think as that confidence in his shot builds, we're going to continue to see more scoring and obviously the assists and the defensive stats that he's been known for as well. Is Warren worth the wait? Could he be a 12-team guy in points leagues? He could be, yeah. I mean, his debut, I think he had the second most shot attempts on the team behind Kyrie, if memory serves. I think he even took more shot attempts than KD. I may be fudging the numbers on that one, but he had something like 11 or 12 shots in his first game. So, yeah, the dude's going to throw up some shots, obviously. Do I think he could be the guy? I'm iffy on that one. I think if you have the space, you can hold him. But again, it's with the state of fantasy basketball this year, I just don't know that most people have the luxury to hold on to him in a 12-team league. So I'd consider him a luxury guy right now. All right. Moving down the list here. Had to recaffeinate. Let's see here. kind of new here. What do you think of the Pelicans team as a whole? Do you think they need to make a trade? Hey, welcome. Glad you're here. Appreciate you stopping in and joining for Fantasy Hoops discussion. The Pelicans, they were a team that I picked to win the Western Conference in the preseason. So I'm really happy with what they're doing. Obviously, they're just such a deep team, right? And if you look at that starting lineup, you have scoring, just ridiculous scoring. You got McCollum, you have Bi, you have Zion, you have great rebounding from JV, you have solid defense from Herb Jones, you have sparks off the bench for scoring and defense in Alvarado. You have Trey Murphy, who can just stroke threes with the best of them. Larry Nance. I mean, this is a great team from top to bottom. I don't think they need to make a trade. I think health is their biggest deterrent right now. But as I said earlier in the stream, I think they have just such a deep team that they can cover and fill in when guys are injured and still continue to win games. So I'm really pleased with the Pelicans. I love what they're doing. I think they're the number 2 seed in the West. If I remember right, 2 or 3. They're killing it right now. I have LaMelo Ball, MPJ, CP3 Beal, Robert Williams plus Herb Williams. I'm in last place. Is there any way I can still make a comeback, or should I just go fishing? Yeah, I love that expression. Excuse me. This is a tough one. LaMelo, RIP. I'm really concerned about what we see from him the rest of the way. MPJ, CP3 Beal, Robert Williams. Man, that is tough. Depending on the rest of your roster, I would never want to say anybody's out. So I think if you can make some trades and get some win now guys, maybe some managers in your league want to get cute, or maybe they think they're the smartest guy in the room and they want to buy low on some of these guys. I mean, honestly, I would try to do the best you can with trading. But at this point, to me, based on that roster, I would say rather than go fishing, take some swings, trade some guys, try to find some value, try to trade LaMelo and try to entice some guys in your league. At this point, if you don't make wild trades, it is fishing time, right? So exhaust your options, and crazier things have happened, right? Thoughts on LeVert? He's droppable. He's absolutely droppable. We saw him drop 41, and now he's a drop. It's exactly what we expected to happen. Once Garland was healthy, there's just nothing. There's nothing left for him after Garland and Mitchell dominate the ball, and he's not a guy that's doing enough on defense, obviously, to make up for that in fantasy value. Latrash needs to retire. Not a question, but I hope this is not directed at LeBron, because this live stream does not take well to LeBron slander. So, Frankie, please don't slander the good name of LeBron James, soon to be the NBA's all-time leading scorer and the greatest player of all time. Yes, you heard it right here. If you can trade any of my players, DJM, Mikhail, Franz, Embiid, Scotty B, Portis, Jared Allen, JJJ, Bain, Lopez, Vassell, and Ant, I'm aiming for Halliburton 10-team head. Man, that's a great team. I mean, that's a really solid team. You got a lot of really solid players on that team. If you could trade any of my players for Halliburton, again, this depends on what the Halliburton manager is looking for. If he's a Halliburton fanboy and huge enthusiast like I am, maybe he will hold out and ask you for crazy, Ant and Triple J for him or something like that, something wild. But maybe he's a little more reasonable. Maybe he really values somebody like Brook Lopez. Maybe he needs some blocks, right? Blocks are very scarce right now. Or, you might be able to entice him with some big man stats if he gets rid of Halliburton. If he does trade Halliburton, he'll be missing assists, and that's something that will be really tough for you to make up in a trade. So I would really hope that he's into the big man stats. And at that point, I would try to hang on to Lopez and Triple J. I mean, I would float Portis and Jared Allen and, Scotty Barnes for Halliburton and, blank player on his team and see what happens. You might be able to entice him that way. And then you still have Embiid, Triple J, and Lopez. I'm assuming you're trying to get Halliburton because your team is loaded with big men and you need some assists and some triples. So that's where I would go. I mean, I would Jared Allen, Bobby P, Scotty B, those three for Halliburton and player X, bench player on his team, to me would be something I would float out there. Vandy, is he a 10-team guy? He's on the border. I mean, he's obviously a 12-team guy, but in 10-team leagues, you may be able to find a better option. But if you're looking for boards, I mean, that's about the best thing he does, right? So, yeah, probably. Okay, let's see. Going back to the Pelicans, we're half a game out of first in the West. Roger that. Bless up on the Pelicans. Trade or hold LaMelo Ball. I would trade him if you could get good value for him right now. I think the more time he misses, the less valuable he becomes. So if you can trade him right now and hope somebody really likes him and thinks he's coming back, trade him. For me, he's in that Kawhi Leonard boat. I would rather just be done. Drop Marcus Morris or Beasley or Barrett to pick up Malik Monk. I would drop Barrett to pick up Malik Monk. I don't think Barrett is a hold right now. He's 86% rostered on Yahoo, and I don't think he's a hold right now. The best thing he does is score, and he doesn't do it efficiently. He gives you just about nothing else. Milton still have value when Maxey returns. Yeah, they'll still have value when Maxey returns, but Milton will be the one that takes the biggest hit. Milton is still going to be a guy that comes off the bench and sees serviceable minutes, especially for his defense. So Milton is when Maxey comes back is a drop. Kobe over Lamid. You're killing me here, Frankie. Kobe's a top 5 player of all time, but he's not better than LeBron, not Lamid. All right, let's see. Getting into the weeds now, guys. I thought we were here to talk fantasy, and I have the GOAT debate. I was good until LeBron ran of him being the best ever. I stand by it. I hope you continue to tune in, man. But I'm sticking to those guns. I'll die on that hill. LeBron is the greatest player in NBA history. With Magic, Conchard, Triple J, and Ja banged up, Baines still out, are Chandler or Williams Jr. going to do anything behind Tyus, Roddy, and Brooks? Probably not. I mean, to be honest with you, I doubt it. Chandler's really interesting, right? I think if I remember, he had something like 9 or 10 points last night. He wasn't on the court very long, but he looked pretty good in his limited minutes. But I doubt it, though. Tyus is obviously going to be the guy. Had like 30 and 10 last night, and that's the type of stuff he's going to do when guys are hurt. Dylan Brooks is going to shoot 20 times a game, and Rowdy Roddy obviously is going to be out there playing defense and traveling on every layup that he takes. So yeah, I don't think Chandler or Williams are going to be relevant for you unless you're playing in a deep 14 teams and up type of league. Do you think McCollum will turn things around? I just traded for him for Jabari Smith and Giddey. He'll turn things around. And I don't think that trade is that trade, looking at it at first glance, you might think, man, that you gave up a lot to get CJ McCollum. But that's a tough one with Jabari Smith and Giddey. I think that's totally fine if you want to trade 2 guys that definitely have some warts to their fantasy game. Smith with his efficiency and Giddey with turnovers and his efficiency as well. But yeah, I think McCollum will turn it around. McCollum is a pretty locked in top 50 guy, I think, the rest of the way, as long as he's healthy. We do with Cade. I don't think he plays the rest of the season. but he's also too good of a fantasy player to outright drop. So you have to stick him in IL until we hear something definitive about a timeline for his return. Personally, if you could trade him right now, I would trade him for whatever you could get. Honestly, uh, you're either going to end up holding him in IL forever, or you're going to get somebody back that can help you win right now. If you're a team that's crushing it right now and you have Cade on your team, then bravo to you, because you gave up a high pick for him, and obviously you just killed the rest of your draft. So you can afford to hold him. More than likely, if you drafted Cade and he's not playing for you right now, your team is not looking so hot, and you would be better served getting somebody that can help you win. Stash Cam Johnson or pick up Fultz or Monk. I have the roster spot for a stash, but in his rest of season upside, that much more than Fultz or Monk. I think Cam Johnson's rest of season outlook is, or his rest of season upside, I should say, if he's healthy or if he's on the court, is, yeah, much higher than both of those guys. Absolutely. That said, injury and playing time absolutely is baked into all these type of decisions. So I think right now, if you can stash him, if you really don't have the space for him, I would try to package him with somebody and trade him. That way you don't just drop him for nothing, because he really is a valuable guy and a potentially valuable trade piece for the right manager. Maybe you can entice the manager that is, sitting pretty and winning all their weeks, and they have a IL spot that they need somebody, or that they can stash in there, because if they're winning, they probably have healthy players. So that would be what I would do. I'd float that trade offer out there. All right, guys, got time for maybe one or two more. Is Jovic out of the rotation now? Reports were that he was good to go, but 3 straight O's since then. Yeah, it seems like he's out of the rotation. And, once most of the guys are healthy for Miami, he's probably going to remain out of the rotation. He's a great guy to hold in Dynasty. If you're rebuilding or, maybe out of contention this year, but he's absolutely not a guy that's a must hold in, redraft. He's not a guy that you need to have on your roster in redraft, period. He's a guy that you can stream if Miami gets that CVS receipt list worth of, injuries back where everybody's hurt. Okay. Shall I pick up Andre Drummond based on the recent trade rumors in Chicago? If you have space, but I really doubt you have space for somebody like an Andre Drummond when there's so many other, worthy guys to grab off the waiver wire. So no, I don't think so. Follow up, is he a stash and redraft? This is Jovic, I assume, with Caleb Martin rumored to be shopped. No, I still don't think Jovic is worth picking up right now. Who should I target in a trade for LaMelo Ball? Honestly, if you can get, and there's a couple other questions in the chat that I just didn't highlight here. Who should I target in a trade for LaMelo? If you can get a top 50 guy for LaMelo, to me, that's the move you got to make. We don't know when he's coming back. We don't know what his game's going to look like, what his minutes are going to look like. If you can get a top 50 player for him right now, I think that's the move you make. All right, guys. So I think we're going to go ahead and call this one. We got a good 50 minutes here for today's live stream. We'll be back next week, next Tuesday at 3 o'clock for you again. I hope everybody's having a great week. Hope you're winning your matchups. Hope you're enjoying, the round of 16 World Cup. Had some great games going so far. And for anybody that celebrates, hope everybody's enjoying the holiday season right now. And we will see you back here next Tuesday. Thanks for stopping in, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.